By 9:30 p.m. on May 4, 2007, the town of Greensburg was silent, except for the tornado sirens. For years, scientists had a new damage scale, the enhanced Fujita, designed to measure unimaginable destruction, but they had not yet seen it in the real world. That night, they got their case study. After the storm, analysis revealed Greensburg was not simply hit. It had been struck directly in the centre by a 1.7-mile wide wedge tornado, making it the first true test of the EF5 rating. This is the story of a town that became ground zero. This is Greensburg, the EF5 experiment. Greensburg, Kansas was founded in 1886, named after stagecoach businessman Donald R. Green. Nestled in Kiowa County, the town emerged as a classic Great Plains agricultural community, its identity forged through resilience against the harsh realities of prairie life. By 2007, Greensburg had become home to 1,574 residents, a tight-knit community living in the geographical heart of America. The town's most notable claim to fame was the Big Well. At 109 feet deep and 32 feet wide, it was recognized as the world's largest hand-dug well. Completed in 1888, this engineering marvel required workers to haul 554,000 buckets of soil by hand during its construction. The well was not just a tourist attraction, it represented the town's determined spirit and ingenuity in creating infrastructure when faced with challenging conditions. Greensburg's historical trajectory mirrored many small Midwestern towns. It experienced periods of growth during agricultural booms, suffered through the Great Depression, and weathered the gradual economic challenges that affected rural America in the late 20th century. By the early 2000s, the community maintained 9 churches, a consolidated school system, the Kiowa County Hospital, and approximately 52 businesses serving the local population. What made Greensburg particularly unique was its geographical significance. Located almost precisely at the center of the contiguous United States, the town sat squarely in Tornado Alley, the region stretching through the central United States where tornadoes occur with unparalleled frequency and intensity. This location meant Greensburg's residents had developed a cultural awareness of severe weather preparedness that would prove critically important. The town's weather history included several significant tornado events prior to 2007. In 1992, an F3 tornado passed near the community. The region had experienced numerous other tornado warnings and watches. Severe weather was woven into the fabric of local consciousness. Residents understood the importance of storm cellars, basements, and weather alert radios. This background created a population distinctly attuned to the threat of tornadoes, even if nothing in their experience could prepare them for what approached on May 4th. Meteorologically speaking, Greensburg sat in a perfect convergence zone. The flat terrain offered no natural barriers to massive storm systems. Warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico frequently collided with cool, dry air from the Rocky Mountains directly over the region. Greensburg sits in Kansas, and that location creates the atmospheric instability that breeds supercell thunderstorms. This geographical and meteorological reality meant Greensburg existed in what meteorologists consider prime territory for tornado formation. By May 2007, the National Weather Service had implemented the enhanced Fujita scale, replacing the original Fujita scale developed by Dr. Tetsuya Fujita in 1971. This revised scale was designed to more accurately assess tornado damage by incorporating 28 damage indicators and 8 degrees of damage. The EF5 designation, the highest possible rating, indicated incredible damage with winds exceeding 200 miles per hour. Yet, in the months since the scale's February 2007 implementation, no tornado had produced damage severe enough to warrant this maximum classification. The theoretical threshold existed, but nature had not yet provided the case study. As Greensburg residents went about their normal routines on Friday, May 4th, 2007, few could have imagined their town was hours away from becoming the benchmark against which all future catastrophic tornadoes would be measured. Their ordinary Midwestern community was about to become extraordinary in the worst possible way, the benchmark for what absolute destruction truly means. The atmospheric conditions on May 4th, 2007, created what meteorologists call a perfect storm scenario. By mid-afternoon, the Storm Prediction Center had identified an extremely dangerous setup developing over the Central Plains. Multiple severe weather ingredients aligned with unprecedented precision. Abundant moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, significant atmospheric instability, strong wind shear through various atmospheric levels, and a powerful jet stream overhead. This combination created high convective, available potential energy, often called CAPE, values exceeding 4,000 joules per kilogram, essentially atmospheric rocket fuel for thunderstorm development. At 8:05 p.m., the National Weather Service in Dodge City issued the first tornado warning. By 9 p.m., storm spotters reported a massive wedge tornado forming southwest of Greensburg. This was not just any tornado, it was a monster, even by Great Plains standards. Radar measurements indicated a circulation 1.7 miles wide, a vortex large enough to engulf Manhattan's Central Park with room to spare. The tornado moved northeast at an agonizingly slow pace of 20 miles per hour, allowing it to remain over any location it struck for an extended period. At 9:45 p.m., this catastrophic wedge tornado made direct impact with Greensburg Center. For the next 12 minutes, the town experienced wind forces beyond anything human engineering had prepared for. The tornado maintained EF5 intensity for a devastating 8-minute period directly over the most populated section of town. Wind speeds exceeded 205 miles per hour based on post-storm analysis. Those forces were powerful enough to scour asphalt from roads and obliterate reinforced concrete structures. The physical transformation of Greensburg was instantaneous and absolute. In scientific terms, the tornado represented approximately 46 million horsepower of energy concentrated in a circular path through the town centre. The destruction was not merely extensive, it was comprehensive. According to official damage surveys, 95% of Greensburg was destroyed or damaged beyond repair. The remaining 5% suffered significant structural damage. Every business, 11 of 11 public buildings, the entire downtown, and nearly all residential neighborhoods were completely destroyed. The damage patterns revealed the unique characteristics of an EF5 tornado. Meteorologist Tim Marshall, one of the nation's foremost tornado damage experts, documented ground scouring where topsoil had been completely removed down to bare clay. Steel-reinforced concrete structures, designed to withstand major hurricanes, were dismantled. The town's water tower, an 80,000-gallon steel structure anchored by concrete foundations, was ripped from its moorings and thrown 75 yards. School buses weighing over 13,000 pounds were carried over 300 yards and wrapped around the remains of buildings. Most tellingly, homes were not just damaged, they completely vanished. Many buildings were swept clean from their foundations, with debris scattered up to 13 miles from their original locations. Analysis of debris patterns showed that entire houses had been lifted intact before disintegrating in the air. Even homes with reinforced tie-downs and proper anchoring systems were obliterated. One particularly striking example was a 5,000 square foot brick home with hurricane straps that disappeared entirely except for its bare concrete slab. The destruction extended beyond physical structures to transform the natural environment. The tornado completely debarked trees, stripping them not just of limbs but of bark down to bare wood. In some areas, 100-year-old hardwood trees were not only snapped but pulled entirely from the ground, root systems and all. Post-storm satellite Imagery revealed a brown scar across the normally green landscape, a path of total biological devastation where even grasslands had been scoured to bare earth. Infrastructure damage was equally catastrophic. Every power transmission line was severed. The town's natural gas distribution system ruptured in over 100. The municipal water system failed completely. Roadways were not just blocked by debris. In some sections, the pavement itself was torn from the ground. Communications infrastructure collapsed entirely, with cell towers toppled and telephone lines destroyed for miles in every direction. The town existed in a complete blackout for nearly 12 hours after impact. In meteorological terms, the Greensburg tornado represented a worst-case scenario, a violent, enhanced Fujita 5 making direct impact on a populated area. The tornado's slow forward movement and massive width meant that some locations experienced extreme winds for nearly 2 minutes, far longer than the typical tornado encounter of 30 seconds or less. This extended duration magnified the destruction exponentially, giving wind forces time to methodically dismantle even the most robust structures. By dawn on May 5th, aerial surveys confirmed what ground observations suggested. Greensburg had essentially ceased to exist as a functioning municipality. The town that had stood for 121 years had been functionally erased in 12 minutes, leaving residents to face an unprecedented question: how do you rebuild when absolutely nothing remains? As the sun rose over the devastated landscape on May 5th, survivors emerged from basements, storm cellars, and the few standing structures to confront a reality that defied comprehension. Their testimonies would form the human narrative of what meteorologists would clinically classify as an enhanced Fujita 5 tornado event. Janice Haney, a 67-year-old lifelong resident, described the sound that preceded the tornado's arrival. She said it was not like a freight train, as people often say. It was deeper, like the earth itself was breaking apart. I have lived through storms all my life, but this was not a storm. It was something else entirely. When I came up from my basement, my house, my neighbour's house, my entire street, everything was just gone. Not damaged. Gone. Police officer Robert Blankenship was on duty that night and provided one of the most harrowing accounts of the tornado's approach. He said he was driving down Main Street when the sirens started, and the department ordered one final sweep through the southeast neighbourhoods. The sky turned a sickly green colour, and then suddenly it went black, not dark, black. Through his spotlight he could see a wall of something a mile wide coming straight at them. He radioed that it was there, and that it was everything they had said it would be. He abandoned his cruiser and took shelter in a bank vault. When he came out, his police cruiser was gone. Parts of it were found 2 miles away. Ashley Barton, a 17-year-old who was babysitting 3 children when the sirens sounded, became notable in post-storm accounts. The kids knew exactly what to do. They grabbed their tornado backpacks with water and flashlights and headed straight for the basement. When it hit, the pressure changed so fast that their ears popped painfully. Then there was this sound like the whole house was being torn apart piece by piece. The little boy asked if they were going to die, and Ashley said she honestly did not know what to answer. The experience was terrifying. When we came up the basement stairs, there was just sky above us. The entire house was gone, but the basement stairs we were sitting on were still there. The 5-year-old asked me where our house went. I could not answer because there was literally nothing to point to. Mayor Lonnie McCollum, who later led the initial recovery efforts, described the immediate aftermath. He said he had been mayor for 7 years and he could not recognise his own town. There were no landmarks, no street signs, no buildings to orient yourself by. People wandered in shock, unable to find their bearings because every reference point was gone. One elderly gentleman kept walking in circles, saying he could not find 3rd Street and that he just needed to get to 3rd Street. The street was there, but absolutely nothing else was. Mike Umscheid, the National Weather Service meteorologist who issued the tornado warning that night, later reflected that when he saw the radar signature, he knew this was potentially catastrophic. He said he used the phrase unsurvivable if above ground in the warning text, language they almost never use. And after seeing the damage, he still wondered if they could have said something more urgent that better conveyed the true magnitude of what was coming. There is really no vocabulary for it. The survivors' accounts shared common elements that proved invaluable to scientific understanding of EF5 tornadoes. Multiple witnesses described a sudden dramatic drop in air pressure that caused physical pain in their ears and sinuses. Others reported a distinctive sound that differed from the typical freight train description, a deeper, more pervasive roar that seemed to come from all directions simultaneously. These sensory experiences helped meteorologists better understand the physical characteristics of violent tornadoes. Dr. Harold Brooks from the National Severe Storms Laboratory interviewed dozens of Greensburg survivors and noted that consistent testimony about pressure, changes and sound characteristics provides invaluable data about what happens inside an EF5 circulation. These subjective human experiences validate theoretical models of extreme tornadic environments in ways that instruments alone cannot capture. Resident Michael Gurney said he expected damage, even severe damage. What he could not comprehend was nothingness. His family photo albums were not scattered or water damaged. They simply ceased to exist. His car was not flipped over, it vanished completely. They found one tire 2 blocks away. Everything else, everything was just gone. How do you even process that? Local pastor Greg Wade spoke of the spiritual impact. He said people asked where God was in this tornado. He told them God was in the basements and storm shelters with the 1,563 who survived. He said they lost buildings but saved souls. The material can be rebuilt. What cannot be replaced, human life, was largely preserved. In that he saw divine mercy amid unimaginable destruction. These testimonies, collected in the days and weeks following the tornado, formed a crucial part of the scientific record. Greensburg survivors provided first-hand accounts of what it means to experience the most violent atmospheric phenomenon on Earth, perspectives that transformed abstract wind speed measurements into lived human reality, and gave meteorologists unprecedented insight into the true nature of an EF5 tornado's impact. The immediate response to Greensburg's destruction demonstrated both the overwhelming challenges of complete infrastructure collapse and the remarkable resilience of human systems in crisis. Within 30 minutes of the tornado's passage, the first emergency responders began attempting to enter the impact zone, facing a landscape rendered alien and hostile. Kiowa County Sheriff's Deputy Kirk King described the initial response. He said, "We could not even get vehicles into town. Every road was completely blocked with debris. We abandoned our cruisers and went in on foot with flashlights. There were no streets, no landmarks to navigate by. We had to use GPS coordinates to communicate locations because saying Main and Oak meant nothing anymore. Those streets did not visibly exist. We were literally climbing over what had been people's homes, calling out for survivors." The response escalated rapidly. By 11:30 p.m., Kansas Governor Kathleen Sebelius declared a disaster emergency. By midnight, the first National Guard units were mobilized. President George W. Bush declared a major disaster for Kiowa County the following day, releasing federal resources. Within 72 hours, Greensburg had transformed from a small town into the focus of one of the most concentrated disaster response efforts in American history. The scale of the emergency response was unprecedented for a town of Greensburg's size. Over 400 National Guard troops deployed. FEMA established a command post with over 150 personnel. The American Red Cross mobilized more than 300 volunteers. Search and rescue teams from across Kansas and neighboring states converged on the town. The Kansas Highway Patrol established a security perimeter. In total, more than 1,200 emergency personnel, nearly equivalent to the town's entire population, were operating in Greensburg within 48 hours. Search and rescue operations faced unique challenges. Standard urban search protocols proved inadequate when buildings no longer existed. Rescue teams had to locate basements and storm shelters buried under debris, often with no visible indicators of their presence. Search dogs became invaluable for locating survivors in void spaces where visual inspection was impossible. In a remarkable innovation, responders used property tax maps overlaid with GPS coordinates to systematically search for underground shelters that might contain survivors. Trauma surgeon Dr. Richard Korrentager, who led one of the first medical teams into Greensburg, recalled that they prepared for mass casualties, but found something different: fewer deaths than expected, and injuries with distinct patterns they had not encountered before. People had unusual combinations of crushing injuries and high-velocity puncture wounds. They saw patients with thousands of tiny debris particles embedded in their skin, human bodies essentially sand-blasted by winds of 200 miles per hour. These were tornado injury patterns that had not been documented in medical literature. The community response transcended professional emergency services. Farmers from surrounding counties arrived with tractors and heavy equipment to help clear roads. Churches from across Kansas established food distribution centers. Amish communities from as far away as Pennsylvania traveled to Greensburg to offer construction assistance. Over 95% of Greensburg's displaced residents found shelter with friends, family, or volunteers rather than in official emergency housing, a testament to the region's social cohesion. As the immediate life safety phase concluded, Greensburg faced unprecedented recovery, infrastructure challenges. The town had no functioning infrastructure, no water, power, sewage, telecommunications, or habitable structures. Municipal government had no physical location to operate from. School facilities were destroyed. The hospital was gone. Records and documentation necessary for recovery existed only in scattered debris or off-site backups. In response to these extraordinary circumstances, FEMA and the Kansas Division of Emergency Management implemented novel approaches. Rather than establishing a traditional tent city, they created what it became known as FEMA Village, a planned community of 300 mobile homes with proper infrastructure, arranged in neighborhood patterns that maintained social connections from the original town layout. This preserved community bonds during displacement, a factor credited with reducing post-disaster psychological trauma. Within 2 weeks of the disaster, an extraordinary town hall meeting was held in a large tent erected on the former high school football field. With nearly 500 residents in attendance, Mayor McCollum presented the community with a pivotal choice: rebuild conventionally or reimagine Greensburg as a model of sustainable development. In a decision that would define the recovery, residents voted overwhelmingly to rebuild as the greenest town in America, transforming catastrophe into opportunity. This decision prompted collaboration between federal agencies, environmental organizations, architectural firms, and corporate sponsors. The Department of Energy established the Greensburg Green Building Program. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory provided technical support. Architecture for Humanity developed sustainable housing designs. Companies including SunChips, General Motors, and Google made significant investments in Greensburg's green initiatives. Daniel Wallach, who founded the nonprofit Greensburg Greentown to support the sustainable rebuilding, explained that they recognized that being the town destroyed by a tornado would define Greensburg only temporarily, and being the town that reimagined rural sustainability could define it forever. The community chose to make their response to destruction their new identity. The response to Greensburg's destruction also changed severe weather protocols nationwide. The National Weather Service incorporated lessons from the Greensburg warning sequence into revised protocols. The phrase "unsurvivable if above ground," first used in the Greensburg warning, became standard terminology for catastrophic tornado warnings. Emergency management agencies revised shelter-in-place guidelines based on Greensburg survival data. Building codes in tornado-prone regions were strengthened to incorporate lessons from the structural failures observed. Perhaps most significantly, Greensburg's response demonstrated that complete destruction, while devastating, also creates unique opportunities for reimagination and renewal, a lesson that would inform disaster recovery in communities from Joplin, Missouri to Paradise, California in the years that followed. The Greensburg tornado fundamentally transformed our understanding of extreme weather events and community resilience, creating legacies that extend far beyond Kansas. The scientific, architectural, social, and psychological lessons from this disaster continue to shape how we prepare for, respond to, and rebuild from catastrophic events. Scientifically, Greensburg provided the first comprehensive case study of EF5 tornado damage under the enhanced Fujita scale. Dr. Joshua Werman, tornado researcher and founder of the Center for Severe Weather Research, explained that Greensburg gave researchers the damage indicators needed to validate theoretical models of extreme wind forces. Before Greensburg, our understanding of 200+ miles per hour tornadic winds was largely theoretical. After Greensburg, we had empirical evidence of what these winds actually do to buildings, infrastructure, vegetation, and terrain. This data has been incorporated into everything from building codes to tornado simulations. The tornado also revolutionized severe weather communication. Meteorologist James Spann noted that the Greensburg warning sequence changed how we communicate tornado threats to the public. The forecaster's decision to use the phrase unsurvivable if above ground likely saved lives. Many lives. This more urgent, consequence-based language is now standard practice for communicating catastrophic weather threats. We no longer just describe the hazard, we explicitly communicate the expected impact. Architecturally, Greensburg's reconstruction established new benchmarks for sustainable community design. Every public building in the rebuilt town meets LEED Platinum certification, the highest standard for green building. The Greensburg K-12 school became the first LEED Platinum school building in America. The town's energy infrastructure now incorporates 100% renewable sources, with wind turbines providing more electricity than the community consumes. Daniel Wallach of Greensburg Greentown reflected that the legacy is not just in the buildings themselves, but in proving that sustainable design is viable in rural America. Before Greensburg, green building was seen as something for wealthy coastal cities. Greensburg demonstrated that sustainability is equally valuable, perhaps even more valuable, in small resource-conscious communities with extreme weather challenges. In disaster management, the Greensburg recovery established new models for community-led rebuilding. FEMA Administrator Craig Fugate later incorporated the Greensburg model into national disaster recovery frameworks, saying that recovery works best when federal resources support locally determined visions, not the other way around. The community's decision to rebuild green was not imposed from outside, it came from residents themselves. That ownership created resilience beyond physical structures. The psychological impacts of the Greensburg experience have informed trauma research. Dr. Carol North, who studied Greensburg survivors longitudinally, found that despite experiencing total material loss, Greensburg residents showed remarkably low rates of PTSD compared to other disaster survivors. The community's collective decision-making about rebuilding appeared to provide a therapeutic focus that mitigated psychological trauma. Giving survivors agency in recovery became a model for trauma-informed disaster response. For the field of meteorology, Greensburg represented a bittersweet validation. The tornado warning system worked exactly as designed, providing 20 minutes of advance notice before impact. Weather radar detected the tornado formation. Emergency communications successfully disseminated the warning. Residents knew to seek appropriate shelter. Yet even with everything functioning optimally, 11 people still died. This sobering reality led to the development of impact-based warnings that communicate not just that a tornado exists, but what specific actions people must take to survive. Perhaps the most profound legacy exists in Greensburg itself. The town that lost everything Greensburg has become a living laboratory for rural sustainability. The annual Greensburg Greentown chain of eco-homes tour brings visitors from around the world to study practical applications of sustainable technologies. The Sunchips Business Incubator supports green entrepreneurship. The town's BTI Greensburg John Deere dealership became the first LEED Platinum farm equipment facility in America. The Kiowa County Commons houses both a public library and the Greensburg Greentown nonprofit, continuing to document and share the community's transformation. Mayor Bob Dixon, who succeeded Lonnie McCollum after the latter's death in 2007, summarized the legacy. He said, "We didn't just rebuild structures, we rebuilt a community identity." Before May 4th, 2007, we were known for having the world's largest hand-dug well. Today, we are known for having the courage to reimagine what a small town can be. The tornado took nearly everything from us, but it gave us the opportunity to become something more than we were before. The final and perhaps most powerful legacy of Greensburg exists in how it changed our understanding of resilience itself. The experience demonstrated that true resilience is not about structures that can withstand any force. The tornado proved that some forces simply cannot be physically resisted. Instead, resilience emerges from communities with the social cohesion, adaptive capacity, and collective vision to recreate themselves when physical destruction is absolute. Today, Greensburg stands as both a memorial to what was lost and a testament to what can be created from catastrophe. A community that transformed the energy that destroyed them into the energy that now powers their future. Thanks for watching Greensburg, the EF5 experiment. If this story of destruction and rebirth moved you, hit subscribe to Tornado Attacks for more in-depth explorations of extreme weather events. Visit our website to access resources on tornado safety and sustainable rebuilding. Remember, understanding these powerful forces doesn't just satisfy curiosity, it saves lives. Join our community today to help share these critical stories before the next storm hits.